Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to try this again. Excuse me. I'm just waiting on Lauren. My goodness. I have a frog in my throat. Hold. I'm getting my lady friend.
Kelley, you're not supposed to swallow frogs. How many times
I,
do I have to tell you this?
sometimes I just indulge myself.
I know. It's hard. It's hard sometimes
I
to
know.
to resist.
What would happen if it was like a dart frog?
Oh,
Poisonous.
oh, wow. I don't know.
I wouldn't
You
be talking for
you
very long.
probably wouldn't be talking. You wouldn't be probably awake for very long. Um,
Yeah. So,
Welcome to this week's episode of Purely OCD, everybody, where we talk about
welcome.
swallowing poisonous frogs and the
Hmm.
like. So we
Right, on a regular basis.
Oh, well, obviously, that's primarily what we talk about. OCD is a side note.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a conference this weekend.
Yes, we did.
Yes. Well, we didn't. We joined in on a conference
We
this weekend, I should say.
right, we participated in it. We
Yeah.
spoke at it, and it was great. It was the IOCDF's International Virtual Conference,
hmm
and that's the wrap for the year.
Yeah, no, we're done with conferences.
We're
That's
done.
weird for now.
Don't worry, submissions
Yeah.
are coming up, I'm sure, in February.
For a next round of conferences. It's
Yeah,
always so great to get to participate in them, though, and
it
to be a
is.
part of the community,
It's true.
see everyone rally together. So thanks to IOCDF for another stellar conference.
Yeah. Thank you to all of you if you
Yes.
joined. I
hmm
do enjoy the Q&A where we get to interact with people and put faces to names and
Yeah,
answer questions. So,
definitely.
but this week's episode is going to be about how we maintain optimism in
Yes.
recovery, and this is what we presented on one of our presentations over the weekend, but with our dear friend Kevin Foss. And yeah, it inspired us to talk about it further today.
Yep. And such an important topic in the recovery process, I think. A lot of people seemed to be happy that it was being talked about this weekend because it's hard to maintain optimism
Mm-hmm.
when you're doing battle with OCD.
It is. It is.
Yep.
So we want to preface this by saying we need to start with setting expectations of recovery. And I think, like Lauren and I had talked about this before coming on, and obviously when we were creating the presentation, but I think a lot of issues come up when people think, oh, well, my recovery should look like A, but really it's B. What's wrong with me? And why isn't it going faster? And why is it not like the person I read on Instagram story?
Yeah, I remember talking to Kevin about it too. I don't know if you were on this phone call, but he said something like, it's sort of like the difference between the nail, like the as it's done on Pinterest, and then your attempt at it, where it's like nailed it, except for you didn't nail it. That's the discrepancy, right?
Yeah,
Between sometimes it's what the experience is like.
right. And I always think of the happiness trap is the perfect example of this, is that gap between expectation and where you're at. So step one, have realistic expectations. And I think let's set them right now. What do you
Yep,
think, Lauren?
I think we should. I think that's an excellent call. So first, you're gonna have
Anxiety
thoughts.
isn't, yeah. Which one first? Okay.
Sorry.
No, yeah,
You
you,
go first and then I'll go next.
no, you were already saying it. Please. I have the dart frog in my throat
It's
anyways.
okay. I think the two things we were saying were basically part and parcel of one another anyway, right? It's like you're gonna have thoughts, period. So long as you're alive, this thing's gonna keep churning them out, and some of them you're gonna like, and some of them you're not. So it doesn't matter if you have OCD or otherwise. having the expectation that they will somehow magically evaporate, especially the ones that you don't want, is unrealistic and is going to set you up to experience yourself as a failure,
Right.
even though it's not a failing on your part.
Right.
Popcorn, koosh ball, Kelley.
Right. It's really that. It's that. And I think when people come in and they're like, well, my anxiety isn't getting better. I'm not reducing my anxiety, which is the most common one.
Yeah.
And we say, well, that's not the goal of treatment. The goal of treatment is to learn how to live with anxiety.
Yep.
I wish we could take our anxiety away, or at least 95% of it, but unfortunately, that's not the case. Maybe one day they'll come up with like a headset that you can put on your head,
Ooh, I
and they'll
like
be like,
this.
beep, boop, boop, boop. My psychiatrist told me this months ago.
He said that there's going to be a
He's
headset.
he's like, wouldn't it be great if one day it always turns into like these theoretical conversations. But anyways,
Love it.
that you put like a headset on, like a, and then the brain's like, they do like a scan and they're like, oh, your brain is deficit these vitamins and you need this type of medication and this type of diet. And then here's your therapist and have a good day.
That sounds great.
I was like, Dr. S, don't tease me like that, buddy.
I want the helmet.
I want it. So,
Yeah,
anyways,
just boop, boop, boop.
until then,
Yes.
we have to accept that we have anxiety, we have intrusive thoughts. Do not measure your recovery based on your frequency of thoughts, the type of thoughts you're having, or anxiety levels.
Yeah, like the intensity of the anxiety and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too, just to piggyback on that a little bit, because there's a great episode of Invisibilia. I think it's Invisibilia anyway. It's another podcast on NPR.
Yep. It's a great podcast.
And on it, they talk about this woman who has a disease that actually calcifies the amygdala, which is, as Kelley and I know, but for those watching and don't know, part of the brain that is largely responsible for our fear response. And she didn't feel any fear, which ended up being hugely problematic for her, right? Like, actually, it was very interesting on the podcast. They couldn't release her name because it would put her in danger and at risk of being taken advantage of by other people, because she just had no gauge for, like none. So we think of fear as this really bad thing, because for those of us who have overactive fear centers, it does tend to become rather cumbersome, especially when you're not trained in how to deal with it. But the reality is that we don't want to get rid of our fear. Not really.
Right. And, even when folks come in and they say, well, I know I don't want to I know that's not the goal. Like, they'll come in saying that. I'm like, great start. But I'm like, yes, but I would like that my thoughts were less frequent and that my anxiety was a little less. And I'm like, well, this is what we've done so far, and here are the tools. And I know that's frustrating, but to this day, and I've been in therapy for many, many years, I still feel intense anxiety.
Yes.
I feel it, man.
Yeah, same.
And I have to just move through it. Sometimes it'll catch me, but it's a very harrowing experience to live with anxiety. And we cannot take that away from you guys.
No. And as somebody who also lived for many years trying to find the solution, I can say that I would not recommend going down that rabbit hole. It's like having lived both lives, right? I think you and I both can speak to this. Is like, on the one hand, I, have lived trying to fight it and trying to fix it and trying to get rid of anxiety and the thoughts. And then the other hand, I learned how to accept them, how to live with them, how to befriend them. And of those two experiences, I can say undoubtedly that the latter is far superior. Like, would choose it 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
So, it's not ideal, but nothing in life is.
Mm-mm.
Um, right? Even the thing that we all purport to want, which is no anxiety, isn't ideal. So having those expectations going into treatment is super important in maintaining optimism. Again, because if you think otherwise, you're going to start beating up on yourself for doing it wrong when you're
Right.
not doing anything wrong. You're just being a human.
Right. Exactly, friend. Exactly.
Yeah. So
Um,
allowing for humanness, part one, very
yes.
important.
The other one that we talked about, or you talked about, was self-compassion.
Yeah, I think you and I both touched on that, I think, in the presentation, which obviously we both are big proponents of that. Do we want to do a quick breakdown of the components for people watching? I mean, I know
Love thyself.
to thine own self give love. um,
Yeah.
which easier said than done.
And we have a whole
I
we
think
have
two parts.
two-part
Yeah.
episode on self-compassion. So if you want to
Yeah.
know in more detail that, but really just in a nutshell, when we're talking about, why don't we talk about like when reframing it in this context or using it in this context of how do I maintain the optimism?
Right. So let's say that you've just been triggered and you did a compulsion, which back to what we were just talking about, we gauge recovery based on, how often you're doing compulsions and how much they're detracting from your life, really.
Yeah.
So let's say that you have done something that you're like, nah, that wasn't really a recovery oriented choice in the aftermath. You might start to want to feel really pessimistic. And then you're going to want to turn to self compassion. How would we do, like, what would be the first step in the self compassion process?
We would notice I'm noticing I'm feeling X. I'm feeling anxious. And
Mm.
I'm feeling this urge to want to compulse.
Or if you've already done the compulsion and you're feeling like down on yourself, where you might
Right.
even say, like, I'm feeling really disappointed.
I'm feeling disappointed. I'm feeling like hopeless. Like, what's the point of all this?
Yeah. I'm frustrated too.
Frustrated.
Yeah.
Frustrated that I still have to deal with this intrusive thought, too. All of
Yes.
it.
All of it.
So acknowledge the feeling.
So you not acknowledge the feeling mindfully, so in that non-judgmental way. Right? Like, oh, look, I'm feeling all of those things, disappointment, frustration, sadness, etc. And then you tap into your common humanity. You say, I bet a lot of people who have OCD, who are working on it, who then do a compulsion and realize it after the fact, feel disappointed or frustrated or
Absolutely.
sad. Yeah, which
Not alone.
can confirm.
You're looking at them.
Yeah. And then from there, we pivot towards self-kindness.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to invite myself maybe to do a little exposure here, because I always say to my clients is like, it's okay if you did a compulsion, like you can go back, let's do an exposure. It's not
Yeah.
all lost, right?
Nope. Totally. Let's contaminate ourselves.
Yeah, I'm going to invite myself to do a little ERP, and something we did clarify over the weekend, which is self-compassion really is doing exposures is actually self-compassion in a lot of ways.
100%. It's the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself if you have OCD. And at the same time, you can do that in a compassionate way. So you can say, this is hard.
Yep.
And this is where I think the self-kindness piece comes in. It's like, I see that this is really hard. And I'm going to hold your hand. I know that's a weird thing to say to yourself, but I do. I say that to myself on the reg. Like, or I got you, right? Like, I'm here. I'm gonna walk with you through this. We're gonna go get through this together. That's self-kindness. And as we talked about this weekend, it's got nothing to do with reassurance. It's completely devoid of, we're not trying to talk ourselves out of feeling fear. It's not like everything's going to be okay. It's just whatever happens, I'm holding myself.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a little exposure here and to say, and after that, I'm going to have some popcorn and watch a movie. What
Yeah.
do you think about that? Bam.
You know, I love popcorn. We both do. It's a thing. Um, and a movie. So yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
Faux show.
So there it is.
So we
Self-compassion.
self-compassion, big deal in this realm. So far we've covered self-compassion. We've covered expectations around therapy. One of the things that I talked about in my part of the presentation a lot was this idea of how we're behaving mentally, right? And so while we can't control our feelings, as we said before, and as much as we might try, we can control how we respond to those feelings and to the thoughts that often bring up the feelings. And so if you respond to a thought like I'm really disappointed in myself and the feelings of disappointment with a 10-hour session of berating yourself for the choice that you made, which is like the verbal mental lashing that you're doing in your mind. I suck. I can't believe I never get this right. I'm never going to be better. Right. All of that. That is building pessimism. That is
Hmm.
building the opposite of optimism. So if you're doing that, dropping it like it's hot, just like we would a compulsion, becomes muy importante.
Muy importante.
Yes.
No doubt about it.
No bad about it. So, yeah, I mean, any other thoughts on that part of the deal?
No, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest ones is really being the mindful observer of your own, of your mindful observer,
Yeah.
non-judgmental observer of your own mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something like that.
Both of those work,
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
also just a little caveat with what we were saying with self-compassion piece. And if you do say, okay, I'm going to invite myself to do exposures, sometimes it's just a really hard day too. And sometimes you can start again tomorrow. So just, I think that oftentimes people, especially on social media, they hear what we're saying or they read what other people are saying and then they take it literally. It's like, well, I didn't do that. Does that mean? So just remember, it's like be gentle, hold loosely, stop pulling on the rope. Drop it, drop the rope.
Yeah. That's such a good point, especially because like everyone's growth edge is a little bit different,
Yep, that's
right?
right.
Some people come into treatment and they're like totally dragging their heels with doing any exposures.
Mm-hmm.
And for that person, I'm probably going to advocate for, hey, maybe accountability is important and working on that is important. For somebody who's like all gung ho, and these are obviously two extremes, and
Extremes,
there's
yeah.
lots of iterations in the middle, but for the other person who's like jumping on the exposures and kind of like really hard on themselves if they don't do it, then saying like, hey, nobody's perfect is also really important. So it's not either or, it's some sweet spot in between.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, and then uh, should we talk about restructuring thoughts, maybe
Sure. Yes.
lightly?
Like
A,
lightly.
a little reframe
Can
here
I
or
get a
there.
reframe? Can I? Should we
So
caveat first?
around,
Compulsivity.
oh, right. So the thing about restructuring your thoughts, it can be very compulsive if it's not done appropriately. So I don't know what examples we used in our presentation. Like I had it on mute the whole time because I was trying to listen and do chat, and it's very overwhelming.
Yes.
Um, but the idea is that if you are not familiar with restructuring your thoughts or CBT, what we're doing is we're not trying to be the cheerleader. We're not trying to say like everything's going to be okay. Like,
Right.
like this is just OCD. No, that's reassurance giving. It's more around, let's throw me a cognitive distortion. What's that?
Um, Everyone else is doing so much better. Do you want me to tell you the cognitive distortion, or sorry?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll finish the sentence. I'll tell you what kind of distortion we're dealing
Okay.
with.
Okay.
Everybody else is doing so much better than me. I see it all over Instagram, and everyone's great, and I'm not, which could
Ooh.
be, yeah, which happens. Um,
Happens a lot.
and happens a lot. And so what we're seeing at play there are a couple of different cognitive distortions, which are like the lenses through which we're viewing the world,
Hmm.
which a la Dr. Jonathan Grayson, like sometimes we're viewing the world through shit colored glasses. And we need to take those, we at least
Oh
need to
my
know that
God,
we're
it's so
wearing those
good.
suckers. You know what I mean?
It's just his delivery of it is so dry too.
Yeah,
No smile. It's
no,
brilliant.
just shit colored glasses.
Hmm.
So yeah, that would be the lenses through which I'm viewing the world, which I can kind of deduce looking backwards, right? I can say like, okay, well, what's off about that thought? Well, I'm comparing myself, my insides to somebody else's outsides. I've absolutely no idea what's actually going on inside of them because I'm seeing their Instagram highlights reel and I'm comparing myself to that. There's also a little bit of mind reading there, like, oh, I know how everybody's feeling because I see them talking. Like I'm watching Kelley and Lauren talk right now. I know how they're feeling or what they're thinking, which,
And they laugh and smile and joke and stuff like that. And
yeah.
yeah,
So everything
I
must
don't
be
know.
good. And if we take those thoughts at face value, we're going to be,
Wah, wah.
yeah, really sad. That's not to say, to Kelley's point, though, that we're trying to convince ourselves that Lauren and Kelley are not happy. We're
Hmm.
saying, or that they're not in a better spot than we are. It's just, okay,
Middle path.
middle path, right? Like, okay, so I don't read minds. I'm assuming nobody out there reads minds. If,
Or we should call the CIA or maybe go to Vegas. I'm just saying.
yeah, let us know. I really want to meet the right mind reader. That'd be great. Um, and obviously, like comparing my experience to somebody else's is always going to have limitations, and we
Oh,
can't
it's
like
always the losing battle. Never.
100%.
It's like the cardinal sin of mental health. Never compare yourself to other people. You will never win.
You'll
You'll
never
never
win.
win.
You will always lose. That is the way. So, well,
That
actually,
is the way.
so
I
that's
have
the way.
spoken.
I have spoken. Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
that.
You're welcome.
Um, but no, it's really funny actually because I think this is just a quick side note. I think people do win sometimes, but they don't win overall. It's like like the way you get stuck in comparison is that sometimes you get a quick hit of like, yeah, I crushed, like I'm so much better than everyone else, and that feels like self-aggrandizing for a minute,
Yeah.
but then you're in this paradigm where it's all
But now it
competition.
just, yeah, now it just takes one
Yeah.
story to see that someone's doing a little better and now you've cracked and shattered the entire
Yep.
psyche. So
It's so much more precarious that way. We really do not recommend cardinal sin. Don't do it.
mm-mm, don't do it.
So yeah, looking at the middle ground of like, yeah, well, I can't tell for sure. This is with cognitive restructuring. If we can keep uncertainty in there, I think it's best. So I can't be sure what they're thinking or how they're feeling.
Right. And there's a little, it's a little bit implied there's catastrophizing, right? Like you're not saying
Mm,
it directly, but it's like, and this is bad because blah, 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 right?
yeah.
It's like, it's not said, but it's implicit. And
Yes.
we want to be careful with that, obviously, as well. It's like, well, I'm doing my best and I'm staying the course and I'm doing the things that my therapist has asked me to do to the best of my ability. And, I'm going to just be here with myself and I'm going to try to stay focused on that and not worry about other people's lives.
Yeah. I'm gonna stay out of that. Not
And it's
mess.
so subjective. Like everyone's stories and the way they explain their recovery and what it looks like. It's so you don't know when they say, "Oh yeah, I don't have anxiety." Are they really not having anxiety, or like do they have a calcified amygdala, or what's going on?
Is there some calcification going on in
Is
there?
there some, do we need to send you to the doctor?
No, it's true. And I've often thought, my husband and I talk a lot about this thought experiment of how cool it would be if you could just like transplant into somebody else's brain for like an hour just to see what the experience is like. Because we don't know, right? I think my husband and I have very different experiences of the world, but we could actually be having very similar ones and just relating to them differently. We don't know.
That's so true. It's so
Because,
true.
yeah. Yeah.
It's just like when you go to the doctor's office and they say, "What's your pain level?"
Right.
And it could be the same exact injury, literally the exact injury, exact same spot, broke ankle, same age, same gender, same exact location. Someone's reporting a 10 and the other person's reporting a 5.
Right. Right.
So it's so subjective, people. Just stay
Yeah.
away from that world of reading minds
Comparing.
and comparing.
Mm-mm. No wins. No wins. So anyway, if you are interested in learning more about cognitive distortions, a quick Google search will come lead you to many different kinds,
Yes.
and you can learn more about them. But I think the highlights are if you can watch when your mind is feeding you stories that are making you feel strong emotions, you might want to check those out and see whether or not maybe you're filtering the information from the outside world through these lenses that are making it look a very specific way, just so that you can maybe hold those thoughts with a little bit more flexibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Take the poopy glasses off.
Yeah. And stop acting like the world is shit just because you're wearing shit colored glasses, right?
Right.
Because that's ultimately like it's down to how we behave. So the cognitive restructuring can inform what behavioral choices that we make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so I know we have a few questions,
Yeah.
and one other thing that we should mention is values and
Yes.
also just things that are important to us in life. So
Yeah.
maybe we can wrap it up with that.
Yeah. Do it. Start us off.
So, if I value being somebody who is really playful and a
Mm.
fun person, as across the board, and my OCD is getting in the way of that, then that's an opportunity to say, oh, okay, so I don't get to be me, right? Like I don't get to be the person I want to be because of OCD if I choose this. So it's really getting in line and in touch with who you are and what you want to
Mm.
bring to the table in any circumstance at any given time. And
Yep.
to do it nicely to yourself, add self compassion because you're not going to hit the nail every time.
Mm.
Um, but
Nobody
to
does.
really, right, but to really recalibrate. It's a way to go, okay, I'm going to I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to motivate myself by thinking about this stuff. Is like, if I do this, I don't get to play with my daughter tonight. Right. So
Mm.
it's saying, like, I'm doing this in the name of
Yes.
being the playful mom and joking around with her and being silly
Yep.
and not really caring what OCD has to say. So I think
Yeah.
sometimes envisioning that in yourself, I know like positive psychology is really toxic, so we're not going to do that.
No.
But I'm pretty sure that in sports, they do positive psychology where they visualize them making a
Mm-hmm.
basket, and
Yeah.
that's really helpful. So I envision myself like making the basket, but not making the basket. It's
Yeah.
the equivalent of it.
Yeah. Doing the hard thing and
Yeah.
in and doing the thing that you care about,
Yeah.
really. Yeah.
It's like that's the version of me that I'm losing by not doing this. And when I'm staring at a really hard exposure, like, oh, you're just going to throw this thing away? Like, you're going to do that, really? It's the scariest thing in the world. Like, let's
Yeah.
just pretend this clip I'm supposed to throw this away. This is my
Yeah.
exposure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. That clip, it's very important.
Rawr.
Arr.
And it's a 10 out of 10 on my list. And if I go, why in the would I ever throw this away? That's insane. This is like the scariest shit I've ever done. And then you think about the person you want to be and that it's this clip that's getting in the way. You go, okay, goodbye.
Yeah.
See you.
Bye. And whew, wow, that's a lot
Yeah.
of anxiety.
Right.
Oh, okay. There it
Right.
is. There it is. No, that's so right. And I think in terms of how that really informs optimism in recovery too, is that that's empowering.
Oh, yeah.
Recognizing like, no, like you don't get to stop me from being the person that I want to be, you jackass
Right.
OCD. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. That I'm, well, again, we can't really force feelings. We can cultivate feelings through our behaviors, or we're likely to cultivate certain feelings by taking certain actions. And if you really put your foot down and you say, I'm not, no, I'm not stepping back from this one, um, that is gonna likely breed optimism over time.
Yeah. Be like, get it, boy.
Yeah,
Get
yeah,
him.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah, mm-hmm. There you go. Do
We're silly.
we? Well, that's for sure. Um,
Questions? I know we're running
yes,
out of time. Okay.
yeah.
Um, so this person asks, our OCD took wedding season joy. How to be optimistic when OCD won't, and that OCD won't ruin more big life feel things.
Mm.
Um, so I'm not sure if this person is getting married.
Well, it sort of sounds like maybe they did get married, and that
Hmm.
it like OCD, like in the way that they're talking about, like took that away from them.
Hmm.
Um, I have thoughts.
Do it.
Uh, I think having this kind of comes back to expectations in many ways, because if you're walking into any big life experience as someone with OCD and you're thinking, I want that to go away, and if that doesn't go away, then the life experience is going to be ruined, that we're in a lot of trouble. And so obviously we don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know what's coming down the pike, but we can be reasonably sure that anxiety and upsetting thoughts are a part of that. And so if you go into your life knowing that that's part of it and making space for that part of it, then it's not going to crowd out the experience and enjoying pieces of the experience, right? Like there's a book that Kelley gave me or recommended to me, I think, a long time ago, called No Mud, No Lotus by Thich Nhat Hanh. And in it, I go to this passage all the time. I'm going to paraphrase. But he says something like, "Some people think that there can be no happiness when there is sadness, right?
Mm.
But that is incorrect, right? Like in order for happiness to be there, sadness must be there. But we have to make space for both, is essentially what he's saying. It's like, and if we allow for sadness, then we get to make more room for the happy too.
Yeah. So
We get to
true.
turn our perspective toward the parts that we like.
That's right. Bam.
Yeah. So I'm sorry that it is very difficult, and there are all these expectations set by our society about what all of these moments in life are supposed to look like, and it's tough.
Yeah. A lot of the questions I think we did answer actually.
Oh, good.
Um, but there's one question they asked about why positive psychology is toxic. They thought this was an interesting comment that I said. Um, and thank you both. So, hmm.
Well, and I don't think positive, like the actual branch of
No, yeah,
psychology, like
I
positive
retract.
psychology.
Uh-oh, you lost. Yes,
What's happening?
I don't know. You're good.
Oh dear. Okay.
Hmm.
So, yeah, but I do think that there's the whole toxic positivity thing, which is what I got you were talking about.
And I was talking about The Secret, which is like, extreme version of it is like thinking that you can manifest having positive thoughts, you can manifest them from happening. Like if I think
Right.
about having a parking spot in this parking lot, I can envision it and it will happen. No, that
Right.
won't happen.
Right. Well,
I mean, it
yeah,
could. No,
it
it
could
could.
happen,
But I
but
don't know if it's because you thought the thought or.
well, and it's dangerous because it's not a problem to think, oh, I can think about things, I can sort of envision things for the future and work toward them like goals. And in that way, I don't think the idea of manifesting is inherently problematic. What I think
No.
is problematic is you shouldn't have bad thoughts. And if you have bad thoughts or you catch yourself in bad thoughts, then you're manifesting this bad thing and that's bad. And there's like almost a fear factor to it, do you know? That
Yeah, it's not necessarily the best option when it comes to an adjunct for OCD
yeah.
treatment.
Agree. Yes. No.
But no, there's a lot of great research actually, and specifically around like sports therapy,
Yeah.
that it works really well. And really, I think it's part of confidence, which I think we do gain when we do exposures as well. Is like, oh, I just did that. I just did that really hard thing. Just
Yeah.
like, when the basketball player makes a 3-point shot.
That's for sure a very hard thing. I could not do that. I can
Oh,
barely make a 2 point shot.
let
And
me tell you, a couple weeks ago, Genevieve and I were playing basketball, her and I was like, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. I tried every angle. I wouldn't stop. I was like, I have to do this. She's like, Mommy, you can do it. Just believe in yourself. Like, and
hmm,
I was like, oh, I love you. Now I have to do it.
hmm.
I
Did you
did
do
it.
it? You
It
did
took
it.
about 15 minutes. I'm not
Wow.
kidding. My
Hey,
forearms were killing me.
you know what? But you did it. You kept at it. You kept practicing. You had some sore forearms as proof.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's a lovely story. The last time, mine is not as inspiring. The last time I was playing basketball, was with several of our friends,
oh man.
including Sean Chinook and
Oh, you
Stuart
got.
Ralph and a couple of other folks. Kevin, you don't know Kevin, but like a couple of other folks. And after a while, I was so bad, I gave up and I just started trying to sing and rap instead to entertain the
You know
group
what?
and or myself.
You went right for the strong point. I like that.
That was where I went. So
But you
anyway,
tried.
I did I did try.
So,
Anyway, so that's
yeah.
a good way to end this actually, is that
Yeah.
like if you it is about practice. It's about continually showing up time after time. And I think one thing we didn't say, which I think is very important here, is that having a growth mindset and always looking at each each moment is an opportunity to try something new,
Yeah.
and that you have the capacity to take the next step and the next step and to make strides in the direction that you want to be going. And it's only ever one step at a time.
Right. You're gonna miss the shot more times than not.
Yeah, especially if your name rhymes with Morin Mosen. And on that note,
And that note, guys, have a great week and
yes, I'm
be nice
here.
to yourself and
Please.
do the hard things.
Yeah, whilst being nice to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
Okay. Adios.
Arrivederci. Goodbye.
Bye.